Chapter 16 discussed sole proprietorship as a business owned by one person who has sole control over the management and profits. They also defined a partnership as a voluntary association of two or more persons formed to carry on a business as co-owners for profit. They defined a general partnership as a partnership in which management, responsibilities, and profits are divided, usually equally among the partners, and all partners have limited personal liability for the partnership's debts. Defined winding up the process of completing all unfinished transactions, paying off outstanding debts, distributing assets, and dividing remaining profits after a partnership has been terminated or dissolved. A limited partnership was designed as a partnership that has one general partner who is responsible for managing the business and one or more limited partners who invest in the partnership but do not participate in its management and whose liability is limited in the amount of capital they contribute. Discussed joint stock company. Talked about who owns the shares. Said that they are transferable, but all goods are held in the name of the members who assume the partnership liability. Syndicate, an investment group that privately agrees to come together for the purpose of financing a large commercial project that none of the syndicate members could finance alone. Franchising, a commercial agreement between a party that owns a trade name or a trademark, which is the franchisor, and a party that sells or distributes goods or serves services using that trade name or trademark for the franchisee. Outsourcing, the increase in outsourcing of manufacturing and service sector jobs. The sole proprietorship, the partnership, and the corporation are the three major forms of business organizations in the U.S. And then Chapter 17 talked about corporations as an entity formed and authorized by state law to act as a single legal person and to raise capital by assuming stock to investors who are the owners of the corporation. Talked about stock as the capital that a corporation raises through the sale of shares that entitle the shareholders to certain rights of ownership. Closely held corporation is a corporation whose stock is not traded on the national securities exchanges but is privately held by a small group of people. Publicly held corporation whose stock is traded on at least one national securities exchange. Multinational transnational corporation, which is a corporation whose production, distribution, ownership, and management span several nations. Professional corporation, a corporation that is organized by doctors, dentists, lawyers, accountants, or other professionals and is specified in their states. Non-profit corporation are used by groups as a way to carry out transactions and own property without individuals who belong to the group being held liable. Debt financing. That pertain to notes, which are short-term loans, bonds, which are long-term loans secured by a lien or mortgage on corporate assets. Debentures, unsecured long-term corporate loans. Secured bonds, a type of bond secured by the issuer's pledge of a specific asset. Income bond, a bond whose payment of interest is dependent on sufficient earnings. Participating bond, a bond that pays both interest at a fixed rate and dividends. Convertible bonds, bonds that can be exchanged at a fixed rate for another type of security. Callable bonds, a bond which the issuer has the right to redeem prior to its maturity rate under certain conditions. Then they went on to identify common stock as a class of stock that entitles its owners to vote for the corporation's board of directors, receives dividends, and participates in the net assets upon liquidation of that corporation. Preferred stock, a class of stock that entitles its owners to special preferences relating to either dividends or the distribution of assets. Capital structure is the percentage of each type of capital, debt, preferred stock, and common equity used by corporation. Stock warrant is a document authorizing its holders to purchase a stated number of shares of stock at a stated price, usually for a stated period of time, may be freely traded. Stock options. A stock warrant issued to employees cannot be traded. Par value, the nominal or face value of a stock or bond. A proxy is a document by which shareholders or a publicly held company can transfer its rights to vote on a shareholders' meeting to a second party. Conflict of interest, a conflict that occurs when a corporate officer or director enters into a transaction with the corporation in which he or she has a personal interest. Business judgment rule, a rule that says that corporate officers and directors are not liable for honest mistakes of business judgment. Limited liability company, or an LLC, is a hybrid corporation with few restrictions. As far as how I relate to these readings, I am familiar with an LLC. My previous employer was an LLC. His business story was he was in the National Guard. He was married, had kids, got deployed, and while he was deployed, for whatever reason, he was unable to pay his bills. He ended up with a lot of debt and ended up being in collections, and no one would work with him on getting his debt paid off. He felt like he was being disrespected whenever he was trying to work with them on making payments, and he was also let go by his employer when he came back from being deployed. So what he decided to do was form an LLC and open up his own debt solutions company, and I worked there for approximately 6 years, and I was there until the very end, due to the lack of the way that he wanted to go about his business, because he did want to give the individuals who had the debt with us, he wanted to give them every opportunity to be able to pay it back. We did not pursue any of them legally, and we did not add interest onto any of their debt, and we worked with them on doing monthly payments, even as small as $25 a month on a sum of approximately $2,000 debt. So just figure that and think about how long it would take that person to pay it off. Due to the nature of his, what word do I want to use? Due to the way that he wanted to run his business, we started getting, our clients were getting more interested in those that did pursue differently. They wanted someone who was going to be more towards wanting to do the litigation with them, not allow the small payment arrangements, which would take a very long time to pay back, and to penalize them and add interest. So it really went against his entire business model, his mission. For some reason, I'm wanting to say, like, ideologically, he had a different way of thinking, and ultimately what ended up happening was the business closed. We didn't have enough money to stay open per se, because we had lost so many clients, and they moved on to larger corporations, those that were doing the things and taking the steps that he refused to do with our business. So I guess it's all, up to the individual as far as how they want to run their business. But at the same time, if something is working and what you're doing isn't, I guess that's really a question that you have to ask yourself, or close it up and move on to something else, which I guess that's what he decided to do.